When I moved into my grandmother's old house, it wasn't because I wanted to. It was all we could afford. After losing my job at a local accounting firm, and with our daughter Emily recently born, any form of savings was a relief. The house had been empty for years, but structurally it was sound, spacious, quiet, with that scent of aged wood that stirs up memories you can't quite place, whether lived or imagined. My wife wasn't thrilled, but I reassured her. I told her we could make it a home. Emily was only 4 when we arrived. She adjusted quickly, played in the yard, ran down the hallway, and talked to her dolls like any child. I was working from home, picking up small freelance accounting gigs just to scrape by. It was a simple routine, peaceful even. Morning coffee, afternoon paperwork, and quiet TV in the evening. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Sometimes the wind made the floorboards groan, or the lights flickered for no reason, but that's expected in a 50-year-old house. One detail that unsettled me was the basement. It had been sealed shut with rusted chains, as though someone wanted to make absolutely sure no one would enter. I kept telling myself I'd open it someday, but I never did. I don't like to disturb what's been silent for so long. During our 3rd week there, I noticed something strange. Emily began speaking with someone who wasn't there. At first, I chalked it up to her imagination, but something in her tone troubled me. She no longer played like before. She'd sit by the dining room window and stare out at the yard as if waiting for someone. I asked her one day who she was talking to. She replied without looking at me, "Michael." I told her that was my name. She laughed, but it was a strange laugh, like she knew something I didn't. Then she corrected me, "Not you, Daddy, the other Michael." I tried to laugh it off, asked her if it was an imaginary friend. But she looked at me, dead serious, far too serious for a child her age, and said he lived here before us. And he was sad. I didn't say anything. I didn't tell my wife. What would I even say? I didn't want to sound paranoid over a child's game, but something in me didn't feel it was just a game. I felt that tightness in my stomach, the kind you get when something familiar starts to feel foreign. The house was the same, but I could no longer look at it the same way. After that conversation, something shifted in me. I started paying closer attention to Emily, not with suspicion, but with a concern I couldn't explain. Kids make things up, sure, but she wasn't acting like she was pretending. Her words carried intention, like she truly knew who she was talking about. Every afternoon, after finishing her drawings, she would sit on the hallway rug outside our bedroom. From there, she could see the backyard, and in particular, the old fig tree standing alone in the middle of the lawn. Sometimes she whispered things, barely audible, like she was having a conversation with someone she didn't want me to hear. Other times, she'd laugh, but never with joy. It was always short, restrained, like someone pretending to be okay, so others wouldn't worry. One night, while I was going over some reports in the dining room, I heard footsteps. I got up, assuming it was my wife heading to the bathroom, but she was sound asleep in bed. I peeked into the hallway and saw Emily standing in front of the basement door. She wasn't moving. I called her name, no response. I walked over slowly, careful not to startle her. When I placed my hand on her shoulder, she slowly turned her head and said, "Don't open the door. He doesn't want you to." I had no words. I took her silently back to bed. She was asleep within minutes, like nothing had happened. I stayed up the rest of the night, haunted by what she had said. Who didn't want me to open it? And how did she know? The next day, I opened one of the old boxes we'd stored in the attic. My grandmother had saved a lot: photos, letters, yellowed documents. I found a faded black and white photo of a young man wearing a hat, standing right in front of the fig tree. On the back, a name written in pen, Michael Harris, 1946. I froze. That was my full name. I had never heard of any relative with that name. I called my father that evening, but he had no idea who it could be. The strangest part was that although the photo was clearly taken in our yard, I didn't recognize the man. There was something unsettling in his eyes. They looked hollow. That night, as I was putting the photo into a folder, Emily entered the dining room quietly. She pointed to the image and said, "That's the Michael who talks to me. If you thought what's happened so far was odd, the worst was still to come. Stay with me until the end. I promise you won't sleep after what I found out." After Emily pointed to the photo, something inside me broke. Part of me wanted to keep denying it, searching for rational explanations, coincidence, mind games, suggestion. But another part, the one that stirs when you feel watched, told me I needed to dig deeper. That same night, I went through the box again. Beneath a folder of old tax documents, I found a small leather notebook, initials MH embossed on the cover. The first few pages were barely legible, the handwriting shaky. Dates from 1946 marked the top of each entry. I made out fragments of sentences. The voice came back at 3 a.m. Dream of the ground opening beneath me. Calls me from the fig tree. I couldn't keep reading. I closed the notebook and tucked it away in my desk drawer, as if hiding it could suppress whatever was awakening in this house. I tried to return to my routine, but everything felt off, like reality had shifted slightly out of place. One early morning, on my way to get a glass of water, I passed by Emily's room. The door was slightly ajar. Her nightlight cast soft shadows across the walls. I paused when I heard her voice. She wasn't whispering. She was speaking clearly, though slowly. She asked if he was still sad. She said I didn't know what had happened, that the fig tree was the place where he'd always been waiting. I stepped in quietly. She was sitting cross-legged, back to me. Her dolls were arranged in a circle on the floor. In the center was a doll I hadn't given her, a rag figure with stitched eyes and an old-fashioned shirt. I asked who she was talking to. She looked at me calmly, as if nothing unusual was happening. She told me Michael didn't speak to me because I wasn't the same anymore. Then she added something that left me speechless. He says you took it, but you don't know how to give it back. What had I taken? What did I owe someone who supposedly lived decades before I was even born? That night, I slept on the couch with the bedroom door closed. Not because I was afraid of her, but because I was afraid of what might be listening. I don't know if you've ever experienced anything like this, but if you've ever had the feeling of being watched by a shadow that doesn't move or make a sound, tell me in the comments what it was like. Sometimes hearing from others is the only thing keeping us tethered to what's real. From that night on, I avoided looking toward the backyard. The fig tree had become a constant reminder of something I couldn't understand. Every time I passed the window, I felt like someone was standing there, just behind the trunk, barely out of sight. I mentioned it to my wife once, casually, but she didn't take it seriously. She said I needed rest, that work was taking a toll. I tried to pretend everything was normal, but I couldn't focus. The notebook was still in my desk, and though I didn't want to touch it every day, I felt more drawn to it. Like some part of me knew the answer was inside. Finally, one afternoon, after dropping Emily at her grandma's, I sat alone in the kitchen, opened the notebook, and began reading carefully. The handwriting grew more frantic as the pages went on. Some sentences repeated like mantras over and over. I shouldn't have gone in. I opened the door. Now I stay. An entry dated September 3rd, 1946, made me stop cold. It read, "Today I heard my name spoken in my own voice. It wasn't an echo, it wasn't madness, it was someone, me, but different." He looked at me from the mirror. He spoke without moving his lips. He told me he was coming soon for what I took. I closed the notebook. It felt like I had inhaled something thick, as if the air itself had become heavy. I went to the bathroom to wash my face. When I looked in the mirror, I swear I saw my reflection tilt its head, though mine hadn't moved. I told no one. That night, while my wife slept, I heard a faint knock on the basement door. It sounded like someone tapping gently from the inside. I didn't go near it. I stayed frozen on the couch until dawn, staring into the dark hallway. The next morning, Emily asked if I had spoken to him yet. When I said no, she only said something chilling. "He's waiting for you, but not for long. I feel something creeping closer with each day." Like all of this isn't about the house or my daughter, but about me. As if an old debt has come to collect what's owed. If you feel the same tightness in your chest as I do while telling you this, consider subscribing. What comes next won't be easy, and I need you here to listen. Maybe you're the only one who'll understand what I'm going through. That afternoon, I decided I couldn't keep avoiding the basement. I gathered my courage and went to the garage for tools. The chains were rusted but intact, clearly untouched for decades. I used a small saw to cut them, careful not to make too much noise, as if I feared waking something that had been asleep on the other side. When the chain dropped to the floor, a chill shot up my spine like an icy current. I placed my hand on the doorknob. It was warm, like someone had just held it seconds before. I opened the door slowly. A wave of damp earth and closed wood hit me, along with a thick air that seemed reluctant to escape. There was no light in the basement. I went down with a flashlight in hand, the steps creaking beneath me. The air was thick, like it had been trapped for decades. At the bottom, the space was almost empty. Just a wooden chair and a large trunk covered by a dusty sheet. I approached the trunk carefully. As I lifted the sheet, I felt like something was watching me, though I was completely alone. I opened the lid and found only 2 items. An old shirt, neatly folded, and a photograph. The photo was identical to the one I'd found before, but in this one, the man with my name was smiling. The disturbing part was that his smile was mine, not similar, identical, as if someone had copied my face onto another body. Suddenly, I heard a sharp sound, like a footstep upstairs. I turned off the flashlight instinctively and held my breath. Silence, only my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I climbed the stairs slowly, closed the door, and reattached the chain, though I knew it no longer mattered. Whatever had come down with me hadn't stayed below. That night, Emily woke up screaming. She said he had come into her room, that he watched her from the corner, that he wanted me to go back downstairs, that there was something he needed to show me. My wife, tired of my vague answers, demanded the truth. I told her part of the story, not everything, just enough for her to know something was wrong. She looked at me, unsure of what to believe, but agreed to take Emily to her mother's for a few days. That night I stayed home alone, but I wasn't alone. I knew that. If you know someone who's experienced something that can't be explained, something that's impossible to tell without being looked at like you're crazy, share this with them. Maybe what I'm going through isn't as unique as it seems. Maybe you too have seen your own face on someone else, someone who wasn't you. With the house silent, every sound became a warning. Pipes dripped louder, the walls creaked like they were breathing. I walked with a flashlight in hand, even though the lights worked. I preferred the narrow beam, as if less light made me feel safer. I knew I wasn't going to sleep. I sat at my desk and opened the 1946 notebook again. This time, I committed to reading it all. The final entries were delirious, fragmented. They didn't seem like the writings of a sane man, but certain phrases repeated with unsettling precision. The debt isn't with him, it's with the name. What you carry inside isn't yours. Return what you used without knowing. I stopped on a page with deeply inked lines. There was an address, a house number in a neighborhood called Eastwood, alongside a name, Edward Monroe. I didn't waste time. The next morning I drove there. It was a modest, well-kept house with a small garden. I rang the doorbell several times until an elderly man answered. He was over 80, slightly hunched, and his expression changed when I said my name. "Michael Harris," he repeated. His voice trembled. Then, without a word, he let me in. We sat in a simple room, surrounded by old photographs and worn books. I showed him the notebook and the photo of the man near the fig tree. His eyes welled up. He said that man was his cousin, who vanished in 1946 without a trace. His name was Michael Harris, just like mine. I told him everything I'd been experiencing. He didn't interrupt, he just listened. When I finished, he said something that still echoes in my head. "You didn't inherit his name, you inherited his place." I asked what he meant. He explained that when his cousin disappeared, his grandmother said someone would fill the gap one day. That it wasn't just about memory, but about a connection left open until someone completed it. And apparently, that someone was me. I left that house with more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. My existence, or at least my name, was never fully mine. Maybe it never was. When I returned home, the air felt heavier, like something was waiting, as if a clock had struck its final hour. In the kitchen, I found the rag doll Emily used in her makeshift ritual. It lay on the floor, with a thread loose at its chest. Inside was a small rolled piece of paper, with my name handwritten 10 times. If you want to follow every step of this story, because there are still things I haven't shared, turn on notifications. What I'm about to uncover might change everything. I stored the paper with my name inside a metal box and locked it in the back of the closet. I didn't know what else to do. That night, the walls of the house began to whisper, barely audible sounds, like words dissolving before they could be spoken. I locked myself in the office and played music, not to listen, but to mask the silence. At midnight, the living room clock stopped. I approached it cautiously. The pendulum still swung, but the hands were frozen at 3. I tried to adjust the mechanism, but when I touched the base, I heard a voice behind me whisper my name. Not the way the living say it, but with that thick pause that memories carry. I turned instantly. No one was there. I looked back at the clock. The hands had moved. They now read exactly 3:13. I stood there frozen, with the absolute certainty that I was no longer alone. At dawn, I went into the basement one last time, not to search for answers, but to leave something behind. The old shirt I'd found in the trunk, the photo, the rag doll, I wrapped it all and left it there. I wanted to close that cycle, but as I was climbing the stairs, I stopped cold. Carved into the wall with something sharp was a word. Give it back. The handwriting was exactly like mine. During the day, I tried to return to normal. I sat at the computer, opened my files, but every time I began to type, the keyboard froze. Then, the system rebooted itself. On the desktop, a new document appeared. The file name, I Am You. I opened it. It was empty, except for a single line at the bottom. You can't keep what you don't understand. I didn't delete it. I closed the laptop and walked away. That afternoon, my wife called. She said Emily didn't want to sleep. She'd had another vision. According to her, the man from the house was now in her mind. She could hear him even outside. He repeated his name inside her dreams. Something had crossed over with us. I didn't say it out loud, but I knew it no longer mattered if we sealed the basement, burned the notebook, or moved away. What had awakened wasn't in a place. It was inside us. If you've made it this far, it means something in this story touched you. If you felt what I felt that night, like a weight pressing down on your chest, then like this video, not for me, but because if you're still here, you're now part of this too. And trust me, leaving isn't easy. I can't remember exactly when I stopped sleeping altogether. My nights became a series of disconnected sounds, footsteps, murmurs, and fragmented visions. I could no longer tell what was real and what existed only in my mind. The house had turned into a living body with its own breath, with a presence that no longer hid. I began seeing things, not vague shadows, but defined figures, fleeting, vanishing the moment I turned my head. One night I saw someone walking out of my bedroom as I headed to the bathroom. He wore old-fashioned clothes. He had my height, my gait. But it wasn't me. I tried recording. I installed cameras in the hallways, the living room, the yard. But every morning the files were corrupted. Only one video survived. It lasts barely 7 seconds. In it, you see the reflection of a man standing behind me as I close the office door. There's no sound at first, but when I turned up the audio, you can hear a whisper. You called me. I stopped recording, stopped trying to understand. I started writing. I needed to put this into words, even if they were scattered. I wanted to document it somehow, not for me, but for Emily. For the day she might need to know what happened to her father. Things got worse when I began losing parts of my day. One afternoon, I woke up lying under the fig tree, dirt in my hands. I had no memory of leaving the house. Another morning, I found my clothes soaked in the bathtub, though it hadn't rained. My wife called me in a panic. She said Emily had started saying my name with a different voice, deeper, slower, like someone else was speaking through her. They took her to the doctor. Tests came back normal, but I knew nothing was. I went to a church, an old abandoned chapel near the neighborhood I grew up in, not looking for faith, but for silence. I sat in the last pew and closed my eyes. I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't look. The voice I heard didn't come from outside. It came from within. Give it back. Give me back. You can't hold it anymore. I didn't know what it was. The name, the life, the story, the place. I started to suspect that I was nothing more than a continuation, a vessel for something ancient that refuses to die. If you were in my place, what would you do? Would you keep searching for answers, or accept that some things are not meant to be understood? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Maybe reading your words will give me the strength to go on, or to give up. I broke the night I dreamed of my own death. It wasn't a nightmare. It was a vision, precise, cold, ruthless. I was lying in my bed, eyes open, unmoving. The house was silent. In the closet mirror, I saw someone sitting at the edge of the bed, watching me. It was me, but not me. His expression was lifeless, like a hollow shell. I woke up screaming, throat dry, drenched in sweat. The air was thick, and something inside me no longer worked the same. I struggled to recognize my own thoughts. I'd read my notes and not remember writing them. My reflection in the mirror had a delay, subtle but real, as if it responded a second after my movements. I decided to face it. I went down to the basement with a lit candle. I didn't bring the notebook, just an empty box, and the intention to return whatever had been forced onto me. I sat in the old chair, in front of the trunk, and spoke aloud. I said I didn't know what I owed, but I was giving it back. I said the name wasn't mine, that the life I was living wasn't mine, that even this body might not be mine. At first, nothing happened. Just silence, thick and humming, like before a storm. Then the candle extinguished itself without a breeze, and in the darkness, I heard breathing. It wasn't mine. I ran upstairs, slammed the door shut, reattached the chain, even though I knew it no longer mattered. I sat on the floor and cried, for the first time in years, cried like I was letting go of a life that never truly belonged to me. That night, Emily called me. Her voice was different, softer, but tinged with a strange calm. She said she was okay, but that the sad man didn't speak to her anymore, that now he only spoke to me, that I had let him in, that he didn't want to go back because he was already inside. It was then I realized this was never a ghost story. It wasn't about a spirit trapped in a house. It was about a consciousness trapped in a name, in a space, in a debt, and I had inherited it like a curse sealed with old blood. I never went back to the basement, not out of fear, but because there was nothing left to find. Everything he was is now inside me, and I can no longer tell where my story ends and his begins. If you know someone who doesn't feel at home in their own body, someone who wrestles with shadows no one else sees, send them this video. Maybe this story isn't only mine. Maybe there are other Michaels out there, still trying to understand what they carry within. I don't know how long it's been since then. Days feel the same. Like I'm repeating the same script with minor changes, stuck in a cycle that won't break. I stopped working, stopped writing, even stopped answering the phone. Sometimes I just sit in the living room and listen, not to the silence, but to what fills it. That echo of something that lives between things, something I've come to recognize as part of me. My wife returned last week, but she's staying with her mother for a while. She didn't say it outright, but I know she's scared. I see it in her eyes, in the way she avoids me, in how she holds Emily tighter when I approach. I don't blame her. I'm not the same. And though I've done nothing, I know something inside me has changed. Emily no longer mentions Michael. She says he went somewhere else. But sometimes, when she walks past the hallway mirror, she stops and smiles, like someone on the other side is smiling back. Like he's still there, just on another layer of this house. The fig tree still stands, firm, unmoving. Its branches stretch toward the sky like fingers that never rest. One morning I found something pinned to the trunk, a page from the 1946 journal, yellowed and damp, with a phrase written in bold letters: "Thank you for continuing the cycle. No one else has access to the yard." Since then I hear my name in places it shouldn't be, in dreams, on the news, in snatches of conversations, as if the story is spreading, as if what started here is no longer confined to these walls, as if the name, my name, is a key to open something or to seal it. I'm not looking for help, not because I don't think I need it, but because I'm no longer sure I want to close this story. I feel more like myself when I hear the whispers, more whole when I see my reflection and sense another mind behind my eyes watching with me. I wrote all of this because I need to leave a record. I don't know how much longer I'll remember as mine. Maybe this story was written by two of us, or maybe I'm just the messenger of a story that never belonged to me. If you made it this far, I want to ask you something. Do you think this was real? Do you believe what I've told you actually happened? Or was it just another hallucination from someone who no longer knows what's seen from what's felt? Tell me in the comments, not to convince me, but because sometimes hearing that someone believes you is the only thing that keeps you tethered to this side of the mirror.